We don't need to do that though. But you guys, most of you all know me. I'm Tim Smith. I'm the President General Manager of the resort here. And to my left is James Sununu. Hey, want to introduce yourself?
I'm James Sununu. I am on the board of directors of Waterloo Valley Resort, and I also run Tyrell Development Company, which owns the undeveloped land in the center of town.
And I'm going to try to sit still because I know it's better for the camera, and I may jump up a little bit, but mostly I'm trying to just do this as we did at the Snowy Owl, so we get some good video of this and we have a good discussion about the gondola. The reason that we chose to speak about the gondola is we've had some pretty good momentum lately on it, and we really haven't talked as a community about the gondola in a number of years, and I'm hearing a lot of scuttlebutt about what's happening. So we just wanted to kind of set the slate clean and make sure everybody knows where we're at with it, what we're doing about it, that we're not stagnant. It's not those years of stagnation that we saw. We've got progress, but it's just it's a process. So we're going to go over that today. So first off, let's talk about the agenda. First thing we'll do is town history related to the gondola, mountain history related to the gondola, the resort master plan that leads into the project proposal that we put into the National Forest. So to start it off, 2022, not that long ago, master plan was approved by the voters of Waterville Valley, and in that it has the word gondola 10 times in that document. So it is definitely referenced quite a bit. It's been referenced a lot over time, particularly in Chapter 8, Section 4, Subsection 5, support the efforts of Waterville Valley Resort to connect the village core and the ski area with a privately financed and operated gondola. So this was put into the town in 2022, not that long ago. But if you fly backwards about 60 years, many of you have probably seen this postcard. This was an artist representation of the original Waterville Valley development plan under Tom Corcoran in the early days, 1968, I believe. One thing you'll notice about this, you'll see, all the ponds there, a boutique hotel on the north end of the pond, or excuse me, on the, what would that be, the southeast part of the pond. You've got a village core, you've got a chapel, you've got some more hotels in the back over here. Everything looks like the village condos, I think. But there, you can see that's the core, and one thing you'll definitely notice about that, wrong way, you'll see the lift. So right off the beginning, Tom was thinking we were going to have skiing access into the village. That was one of the first fundamentals of this development plan. But one thing you'll notice, if that's the pond, and that's southeast, then this is going the wrong way. We'll get into that a little bit more. So you can see it here, April 1970. This is the development plan, the village plan that I found from the Waterville Valley Company here. And you can see the lake, and you can see where the transportation hub was going to be. Now Town Square is a little bit moved back where we're at now. You can see a health center was going to be next to the pond. You can see the civic center over here, and an elementary school off in the side there, which is kind of interesting. But one thing you'll notice again as you zoom in, you got the ski lift right there again. So once again, that one shows the ski lifts in town. So let's fast forward a little bit. We're in the late 90s. I couldn't exactly get a good, right there, 2000. You blow it up on a big screen like this, you can find it. But you can see this one was done in 2000 right there, February 2000. They're talking about the parking and how the parking structure would be in this development that they were looking at. But you can see the ice arenas here, Town Square's over here, a new hotel on the side of the pond over here, and then a whole lot of triplexes, it looks like. But one of the things you'll notice when you zoom in is you'll see right there, you've got the gondola base. And this is the first time that we see the gondola going the other direction. You can see it from front. If you look longer, you can see that's the gondola path right there, and that's definitely heading off to the northwest. So that's heading towards Tecumseh. So that's the first. This is the first that I see of it heading towards Tecumseh is this study that was done in 2000. So then you see this one's in 2002, January 2002, and you can see the triplexes are now a little bit bigger, and they're lined up more like the Green Peak condos are now. And you zoom in a little bit, and you can see again the reserved easement area for aerial transportation system right there in the middle. And once again, that's headed out to the northwest, so that would be heading towards the Tecumseh, Mount Tecumseh, and that's 2002. So then in 2013, Waterville Valley Company, and I put this screen down here so I look over here, so I wouldn't be facing that way when I was talking. Waterville Valley Company came up with the completion of the sustainable four-season resort community. And if you remember, this was presented to the town, and it was a booklet of all this research that SE Group did. This led to the pedestrian study that the town did later. This was kind of the beginning of that, working with SE Group. That's Snow Engineering. For those of you who don't know, Snow Engineering is a third-party contractor that we still use today for a lot of our work that does most of the engineering at ski resorts nationwide. And they really one of the big things that I took away from it was the fact that you have to have the community, the landowner, and the mountain all together. And at that time, those were three separate entities, because it was WCI was the landowner, the community, and of course the mountain was Waterville Valley Company that was just purchased, with the group, the current ownership group, a few years earlier. But you can see in this plan, the gondola is now moved. It's getting closer to Town Square. It's still heading off in that northwest direction towards Mount Tecumseh, and it's kind of finding its home a little bit closer over time. Now fast forward to 2019, Tyrell Development acquires the land, and this was your first attempt at it.
Yes, so in 2019, the Waterville Company started winding down its business. We acquired a number of the parcels of land they owned, including all the vacant parcels around the core of town, and we did this exercise as an update to that plan you just saw on the last slide that incorporates a lot of the same elements that were on there in terms of hotels, some housing, some mixed use, and also the gondola. But this is where we start to try to, in working with hand in hand with our resort team, start to look at aiming the gondola in a different direction. And Tim can probably explain a little bit better than I about why it evolved into changing the thought about where the gondola goes once it leaves the center of town.
All the other plans that we looked at so far really kind of end at Snowsbrook Road. You don't really see where the gondola is headed after Snowsbrook Road. Well, if you remember, the first gondola was somewhere over here, and it starts to go across here. And we've had so much development over the years down in this area. There's a lot of parcels that you'd have to cross over, cross through, impact to all have a massive impact on. This alignment here pretty much stays over the Tyrell land, goes over the town property of Snowsbrook, and then goes over Osceola 1 as it goes out of town. So we tried to align it to make the least amount of impact on the homeowners. And the way that we did that was all along they were thinking that the gondola was going to be one stretch from here all the way up to the ski resort and just try to find that straight line. Modern technology now allows us to put mid stations in, where the mid station allows us to take the carrier that would be coming from the town, take it off the line, and let the rope turn and go up the mountain. So we put a mid-turn station in the new design of the gondola, which allowed us to redirect the angle a little bit.
And what that allowed us to do is move that location to an area further down Triple I Road and take the gondola terminal out of the existing base area, which I think, as everyone here knows, is awfully crowded with buildings and structures already. So it was going to be quite a challenge to get that gondola terminal to fit into the existing base area without having to potentially tear down some existing structures or seriously reconfigure how we operate at the base of the mountain.
And one of the things that we do, and we'll talk a little bit more about master development plans, but one of the things that we do is we study through SE Group, through our mountain developer, Dave Dean, who has 40 plus years of experience doing this. We do the numbers. We calculate our comfortable carrying capacities. We make sure that we understand how much capacity do we have and where our weaknesses are. And one of our weaknesses is the congestion of the base area. It's very tight, especially when we get to a maximum capacity day, which we should be able to do 6,000, over 6,000 people. When we hit close to 5, it really feels tight down in that area. I can only imagine what 6 would feel like. Hopefully we get there someday. But that's one of the reasons that we want to turn and make a mid-station. We'll talk more about that as we go on. Okay, then 2022, fast forward, we have a few things happen.
So, based on a number of things that happened in terms of with COVID and resort planning and in consultation with the town, we took another look at the master development plan versus what we did in 2019. And that plan had been constrained by parking ratios that are required by the town zoning ordinances. So you see a lot of surface parking, a lot of pavement parking lots and things like that. But we got a lot of feedback about increasing the density there, potentially putting some parking underground, increasing the amount of mixed-use space in there. So this was a higher density master plan revision that we came up with in 2022, which incorporates structured parking. You don't see it here, but underneath most of those structures, there's underground parking. There's 2 parking garages that have some elevated parking. And you have 2 hotels on the south side of the pond and next to the gondola. You have some mixed-use buildings, the A and E buildings, where you have some housing along with ground floor commercial and retail and other places. And then you have a number of other commercial structures right in the center of town next to a green. So, I won't get into too much detail on those things. If folks are curious, I talked about this plan last October for the speaker series, and that video's available to watch. But again, this is all built around the gondola at the heart of this, in terms of creating a real hub of activity in the center of town, because suddenly you're going to have a lot of folks going up and down to the resort via the gondola rather than driving their cars up and parking in the parking lots or taking the Schuss bus up. What we want to do is create a lot of foot traffic into the core of town, have people use that gondola. It's a year-round lift, so we expect a lot more year-round activity and going on in there. And so this was just a revision of the plan, but the gondola is still at the heart of it.
All right, so let's turn our attention to the mountain. Up at the mountain, we work on U.S. Forest Service lands, and U.S. Forest Service, the master development plan, we have to develop every 10 years. And basically what this does is gives us a roadmap that we have to, or we're expected to, guide us as we go about the development of the resort over the next 10 years. So it's a 10-year roadmap. It sounds like a long period of time, but it really isn't. And you'll see these master development plans kind of all over the place, but it's an interesting process to go through. But the approvals of the specific elements are received through this subsequent submittals. So if we want to do something that's in our master development plan, we have to submit a project. We have to ask them, just for instance, if we're doing a small project up on the mountain, anything that's outside of regular maintenance items, we have what's called a small projects day, and that's coming up on the 17th of July, where we fill out a form and we do the small project and we issue it in. Sometimes it comes back and says, actually, no, that's a large project. You need to go through the proper channel for that, or that's going to be just fine. We'll put it into small projects. How ready are you for this? And if we say, oh, we need this now, they'll push it forward. If we say, well, it's probably in the next 3-4 years, they'll take more time to discuss it, and that small project might go multiple small projects days to hone the purpose and the need and bring it all together. All the way up to the EIS, which is an environmental impact statement, that's the highest level of NEPA, and we'll get into that a little bit more here. But the master development plan is accepted, and that's a big difference. It's not approved by the National Forest, it's accepted. And the big difference there is approval means you can go ahead and do it. Accepted means we agree that this is possible. So they, in the master plan review period of time that goes out for public scoping, then it goes back to the forest soup looks at it, looks at any comments that come in that are regarding the plan, addresses any comments from the public about it, and then says we accept this as a plan. And mostly they're comparing it with what's acceptable within the forest plan, because the forest plan is supposed to be done every 10 years also. Our forest is supposed to go out and do the same type of thing, master development plan for the entire forest. I think we're working on a 25-year-old plan right now, I believe. So we're ahead of the game right now. But we had a master plan here that was done in 1971. So this was one of the earliest master plans that I've seen. I have some of the original planning, but it wasn't considered a master plan. In 1966, when they started the planning for the resort, it was really just coming about. Ski resorts on the National Forest weren't really regulated as heavily as they are now, and it wasn't really a process to it. And even in the 71 Master Development Plan, it called for a golf course. If you read it, it calls for a golf course in this area, which is really interesting to think about. I gave the full plan to the Historical Society because it's such an interesting read, and it's done. And this 1971 Master Development Plan wasn't done by the resort; it was actually done by the National Forest, which is another interesting part. So it's a different take on the development plans. But you can see this is what they were thinking. This is what Waterville Valley Company was thinking in 1971. You can see the ski resort here doesn't look all that much different, right? You can see this is actually Valley Run Double. This was where this dotted line here was going to be what became the Valley Run Quad, but we all know it ran differently. This was Green Peak over here. Green Peak goes down over towards where the shop is now. You have another lift that goes down kind of where Clean Shaven is now. And then another beginner lift down below, which is really interesting to me to think about because in 1971, they already recognized that they had a problem with parking. You know, they put a lift down below the parking so you could ski down to it. Pretty interesting. Then you go a little bit deeper in towards the town, and we're looking at, now we're thinking about Snows Mountain right here, right? And look at how many lifts are coming into town. So this is Snows right there. That's the one that was constructed. But then there's ones over by the golf course, and there's a village lift coming in, and then there's two lifts coming out of town here. And you can see this dotted line right there is the property line for this side is the National Forest, and that side is the private property. This is the 1976 plan. Things changed real quick, 5 years, and now we've got zoning. You can start to see the zoning, village commercials, the rec land, high density, rec, low density. You're starting to see that come in. You got trail designations for all the trails that they were planning to put in. You see some lifts that have come out, and you see some additional lifts that have gone in. They're all over the place. But as you can see, when you zoom in a little bit more, you can still see that one village lift that's still, sitting right down there in the core. Then fast forward. I don't know what happened between 1976 and 1998, but it seems as though there's probably a lot going on, and they didn't have time to do a lot of master development planning. So the next master development plan is 1998. If you think about the timeline of 1998, 1996 is when the company changes hands over to the American Ski Company, and American Ski Company has it from 1996 through middle of 1997. So this is just coming out of that. So I believe a lot of this was done while the resort was still in the American Ski Company hands, if that was my guess. Yeah. So you look at the 1998 plan, I'm sure they were getting pressure, American Ski Company in Booth Creek after was getting pressure to have a development plan, because as soon as acquisition happens, the National Forest comes in and says, okay, what do you plan to do? That's what happened, correct? I wasn't
Correct.
here for those
Yes.
first couple of years.
Yes. Especially when you're 10 years overdue for the plan, they're eager to have one done.
Yeah. So this is the 1998 plan. You can see in this plan, we start to get, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You can see that the chairlift is it's down to one chairlift now that's coming into town. And you can see right here, you got the Snows Mountain lift. That's right there, and you see the tennis courts, you can see the golf course in here. You're still golfing across the road, apparently. And this is the big one. You see the ponds. The snowmaking ponds are put in. There's your lift. So now, if you think about that, you think about this. This is 2000. So this is just 2 years later. The gondola has changed direction. The lift isn't any longer there. You can see the big question mark where the lift was. So it's kind of interesting when you think about, okay, this is WCI that owned the property, and the last one we looked at was the resort company that owned the resort. It doesn't seem as though they might have been on the same page at that point. So our current MDP, 1998, 1976, 1998, and then nothing. No master development plan. When after acquisition in October of 2010, ski resort opens up, the master development plan study starts taking place in 2011. It was submitted in 2019, final submission. I started working on it in 2014, and in 2014, I had all the paperwork ready. I thought this is gonna be a breeze, we'll turn it in and move on with life. It was from 2014 until 2019, it was a learning experience, to say the least. I had going back and forth between the forest, ownership, forest, learning that I needed to speak a different language, hiring a developer to be able to speak that language so that we could get through the process, and losing a lot of information and data. It was very hard when they're speaking CAD and we're speaking ski area manager and they're speaking investor. It's very hard to put all of that together, is what I learned, and put all those languages together. And what ended up happening was, I think a lot of the languages weren't melding right. And that's what that period of time, that 5 years, really took to be able to make sure we were all on the same page. We're moving in the same direction. We all agreed that this was the best thing that we could do for the mountain and for the asset of the land. So in 2011 or 2013, no, 2011, sorry, this was the plan. This was the plan that I walked into. I know you're all looking at it going, whoa, what is that? So let's start at the top. You look at this is high country. If you can see right here, that's the old summit. That's where Hassel is now. They have a chairlift on Hassel. And some more development to the skiers left of high country. And then you come down and you've got Green Peak, because that wasn't developed yet, which is right here. You've got some runs coming off of site, coming down through where we have blades now. You got another run right here that would be doing that also. You've got chairlifts. You can't really see them well here, but you've got the high-speed detachable that comes to 6 now, and that was going to be replaced. Another high-speed G that went from here to here. Another lift that was from here to here. I believe it was a surface lift. Of course, you got the Valley Run lift, the Tecumseh lift, the Meadows lift, and then you've got a learner lift down here. And if you remember from the plans from earlier, from 1976, that lift was in that same spot in 1976. There's another lift that goes down here. This is a learner's area, and then another lift up right here. Another learner lift right there. And then this is where you see the gondola. You can see the little red line, and the gondola goes up and comes up to Green Peak and is almost in the exact same spot as where we proposed it now. And then this is really fun to think about. There's a whole other South Ridge ski area over to the side. That's a lot. I don't think that's doable in 10 years. So we worked off of that, and what we came up with was this. If you recall, this was in 2019, 2020, we released this for public comment. We had quite a bit of discussion about it. We slimmed it down. You can see the current ski area is up here. Green Peak is in place, so the chairlift's a little grayer. Tecumseh 6 is right here. The T-bar is in place on High Country, but you see a learner lift here, which we've always thought would be a great quad to have for beginners. It would also allow us, if we had high winds on Green Peak, to be able to get guests to the base area from the mid-station. We have a mid-station here with the upper section of the lift going up to the top, and you can see we named it a gondola because at that time we were thinking we could integrate chairs and gondolas and maybe make that better. We've now done more engineering on that and decided that isn't the best case for us. It's just not as desirable as just keeping it a gondola. And then you see we put a town square because we didn't have the town square development plans done yet. So we didn't know exactly where it was going to land. So we said it's going to go in this swath, somewhere in this swath. And you can see here, red lines, that's Nordic skiing, because we know we want to have the Nordic skiing up by the ski area so we can add snowmaking for some additional Nordic skiing in tough years like last year. You can also see we did some higher elevation Nordic trails. And this one right here is Rough Rider, and that's the one that we got done just a little while ago. And then we've got Red Feathers out here, as many of you know. We're working through the process. So that's a small project. That's a good example of a small project that we're working with the Forest Service on. We're realigning that now to stay away from our wellhead, and we're actually thinking of going a little bit looped in the other way right now. But we're working on all those projects now, and this was accepted in 2020. So I believe it's February 4th, 2020. So in order to do all of this, we have to go through what's called NEPA. NEPA is the National Environmental Policy Act, and this is the process. The official proposal letter. So the first thing we have to do is we have to tell them what we want to do. You want to go put in a new chairlift? All right, write us a letter. Fantastic. And then this turns out to be a very difficult part. The evaluation of the PPL. Just that section, those two right there, took us a pretty long time.
3 years.
And then you get into the proposed action development. So we start proposing it with the Forest Service, like what exactly is happening, how are we gonna go about this NEPA process, what potential, it's called, a lot of time, what we're calling it now is called pre-NEPA. So we go out there, we do a lot of evaluation. One of the strategies we used was we said, well, why can't we do all of those things at the same time? So we put a lot of development effort into the last 3-4 years. We've had a lot of environmentalists out there studying that section of the property, of the land, to be able to see if there's big-nelled thrush, if there's the brown-nosed bat, if there's lynx habitat, if there's ephemeral streams, if there's water, if there's wetlands, all that kind of stuff. We've been having that done for the past 3 years. So we're actually coming into this process very well loaded with information. Oops. Then the NEPA process begins. So the NEPA process begins, the public scoping, the comment period, and public comment opportunities. Oops, hitting the wrong buttons. Issues and alternatives are brainstormed between the resort, the third-party contractor, and U.S. Forest Service. Studies and analysis are conducted for those alternatives, to identify what those alternatives could be. And then pre-decision objections and resolution period. So this is the period of time when they release a pre-NEPA, and that's the non-decision document that goes out to the public that says this is where we're at, and this is what we're thinking. And then finally, you get a publication and issuance of the final decision notice and finding of no significant impact, if appropriate. So that's the final stage.
Wait, just one thing.
Oh, I got a lot to go through.
I know. But just so folks understand, from that NEPA process begins to the last box down there, that's another 2 years. When they issue their notice to begin this process, it starts a 2-year clock that ticks before that process is complete. So if that notice is issued this summer sometime, we're looking at the next 2 years, so from mid-2024 to mid-2026, to work through that entire process.
And that's actually been put into law. They have time frames.
Yeah.
So then we have our project proposal letter. So we're talking about the gondola now, in particular, not all the other project proposals, but the project proposal that we put in specifically for the gondola. And the background of the gondola, as we all know, it's been talked about for decades. It's been talked about having a link from the ski area to the resort since the resort started. And that link is incredibly important. It also is a point that we made of the fact that we're falling back in the market, where our ski resort is relatively small compared to our competitors. Our competitors, Bretton Woods, twice the size. Loon is about a third bigger. You go over across the state lines and you start talking about resorts that are 10 times the size of our skiable acreage. So in a competitive market, we're falling behind because we haven't been able to, we haven't had the desire for development or haven't had the ability to develop. So we wanted to put that out there, and this is actually the verbiage from that. I wanted to put that out there for you. But the purpose and the need, there's definitely a need for non-vehicular transit connection between the town of Waterville Valley and the resort to increase the ease and access and reduce the vehicle trips and transport time between the two areas. As we all know, the ski resorts, as a crow flies, is less than a mile away, but it takes us almost 3 miles to get there because we have to drive around. There is a need for increased train diversity and quality of bladed train available at the resort. There is also a need for to improve the lift and train access for guests in the base area. As we all know, the base of the valley is really tight, and it's hard to get from the parking lot up to the ski area. Those are the problems that we have with our current base area, and those are solved through this proposal. And there is a need for additional on-mountain guest service space. And I know the first thing everyone's going to say is, well, what about the sunny side? The sunny side is unfortunately, it's not in a good position. The sunny side is in the middle of the terrain. It's not at the base or at the summit of the lift. So it's very, very hard for us to draw people in. And it's shown through the numbers over the years that part of that lodge couldn't support itself, for one. And then after COVID, after we shut it down, skyrocketing pricing for fuel, skyrocketing pricing for heat, it is a very porous log cabin. I found out that we were pumping over 300 gallons a week into that lodge in diesel fuel. So that was, it just wasn't necessary for us to open it up, especially with the lodge being bigger now. And it doesn't do what it's intended to do, which is take pressure off of the base area. What happens to that is still yet to be determined. We are planning to use it some more this upcoming winter for the World Cup, but that is yet to be determined. But we do know that when we're in the base area, especially as we're increasing our skier visits, and what our data tells us is, for one, modern skiers are spending more time inside lodges. Whether it be the weather, whether it be the fact that we have faster lifts, more aggressive skis, the aging of the skier population, whatever it is, we know from our data, from the National Ski Area Association, that skiers are spending more time in the base lodge, which is taking up more space, which means we need to have more space for those guests to be able to have a good experience. Recently we've done things like the bag rules, and we've done things of the BBTS comp centers and trying to spread people out. But if we are going to hit sustainability, which we need to hit for the resort to be sustainable, we are going to need more space. We are also selling out of our children's programs. Our children's programs, particularly our seasonals programs, small children's programs, sold out in, I think, 30 minutes at midnight this past winter. BBTS's Mighty Mites sold out within about the same amount of time this past spring. So we know that there's a high desire for the upcoming generations for their children to enjoy our sport, and we need to make sure that we can accommodate it. So our project proposal that we did looks a little different. It's a lot different than the original 2011 master development plan with all those squiggly lines and massive amounts of runs and lifts. We really honed this down over 3 years from
Yes.
the master development plan to the acceptance of our project proposal. And the beginning of all of this started with conversations with the National Forest about what is it going to take to move the ski area's permit boundary, this line right here. If you see this line right here that comes down, that's our current boundary line, and everything inside of that is expansion. And what our objective is to move that boundary. Give us the ability to expand. Currently, we're landlocked. We have no expansion of possibility. We're landlocked all the way around the resort. We're pretty much pushing right on the ski area boundary as is. And so we really want to push that boundary. And so the question is, well, why don't you just go for the entire master development plan? And what we heard from the forest is that they want to make sure that what we do is achievable. They don't want to do all of the studies and all of the EIS work if it's not going to be done. We have a little bit of history here with that. The ponds was an EIS that was done in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, was accepted by the National Forest. Was a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort went into the development of those, where those ponds would go, and we still don't have the ponds. So they want to have a project that's small enough that it's going to get accomplished, but large enough that it qualifies for
That it justifies the boundary.
that it justifies the boundary expansion. So this was really a chicken and egg type scenario that we got into. The first proposal that we did was, let's just do a bus stop and have glade skiing from Green Peak to the bottom. That is 100% accomplishable. We can do that. They did not think that that was a large enough scope of project. And the interesting part of this is we were working hand in glove, and it was, a lot of conversations have to go back and forth and back and forth. Is that a big enough project or is that not a big enough project? Well, I can't speak directly to if that's a big enough project, so we have to talk to more people and more people. So we went from that to, well, what about the quad chair lift? And doing the quad chair lift up and doing something simple like that. That's completely achievable, but what that would do is it would almost be on our boundary line. So what's the purpose? You can do that in your current boundary. So it wouldn't push the boundary out. So at the end of the day, we had a good socially distanced meeting with the National Forest. I'll never forget it because there must have been 20 of us in the room, and it was a room this size, and we're all in this giant circle during COVID, and we're discussing what is an acceptable project proposal, and we decided that a gondola from the town up to the top is the correct project. However, the trails right here, if we put in all these trails and put that as the project, well, it'd be very, it would point out the fact that we need more water. And the water would become the issue. And so then the ponds become the issue. And then we get into this pond issue again, and then we're studying ponds again, and then we're not moving the project forward. So we did the studies, and we can make snow on these lower trails with our current snowmaking system without having to expand our snowmaking system. This trail would be lift access, and it would not have snowmaking on it. It would be primarily for lift evacuations, and if we had snow, we'd ski it. And then the dark shaded areas are all gladed areas that we'd like to clean up the trees, make sure that we have good glades. If you've ever been in those trees, they're growing at a consistent state because they were all logged approximately at the same time in the early 1900s. So the trees are kind of pick me up. What are those? That game I play with my kids where you pick up the sticks, pick up sticks? Yeah. I guess that's the name. But it's like pickup sticks in there. You can hardly walk through it. It's so dense. And I'd like to clean that up. And if we can do that over the coming years, we can actually make the forest healthier and make it look better as we develop the trail system around it. So this is where we landed. And this is the current project proposal. As we move forward and we start doing more analysis over the project proposal, we've ran into, what does it look like? How do we, the proposed actions, we're getting into those proposed actions, if you remember the NEPA slide. The proposed actions, where are the lift towers? How do you get to the lift towers? How do you plan on building this thing? which is, once again, a chicken and the egg. We're not going to go out and design an entire gondola, spend all that money on engineering, and not know if we can put it in. So Doppelmayr was able to do a preliminary engineering design for us. M&D did a preliminary engineering design for us. I don't think Leitner Palma did, because they did the lift. But we had them do some preliminary studies of it. We saw where they land in some of their towers. We saw the spacing that they have on their towers. We made some educated estimates of exactly where our towers land. We've been out into the field a lot, as I mentioned earlier. We found the old skidder roads. That's where these red marks are. These are all old skidder roads from when they logged. We found the vernal pools and where the water lies. So we know where that little bit of water is coming out, so we've lined our towers up. We've put kind of place marks for all of our towers in. We know that through our studies, we don't have any bicknell thrush habitat. We've done bat. We haven't found any of the bats over there. We do have lynx habitat in that area, so we're having to do a lynx mitigation plan with this. So that's part of the NEPA study. And we know that these towers are all in spans that we know we can accomplish with modern lift technology. And we've designed the routes for getting in and out of those towers. And then when you see the lower section, so that upper section right there is 4,674 feet. That's just a little bit shorter than the Tecumseh lift. The total vertical is 1,379 feet, and this bottom section is 3,710 feet. With the two connections for the scenic gondola rides, that's a big portion of this. This will be the longest gondola in New England. So that's our claim to fame. That's our number one, our big thing. And when we're talking about that, that's really an important part of this. If you remember the slide earlier, we're trying to design a 4-season sustainable resort. And that's the big thing. And over the years, the resort just hasn't grown as much as our competition has. And this will be something that we can put our claim and our mark on that says, come to Waterville Valley, we have the longest scenic gondola ride in New England. That's going to be a big claim to fame. That's going to give us 4 seasons of activity. And when you start thinking about being able to take people directly out of our core and bring them into the mid station, which is right here, and you can see there's a large building at the mid station. We're going to have, eventually we'll have ski school operating out of there, but we're going to have space there for functions. We're going to have space there for summer activities. We're going to have space there for people to come in and maybe do this speaker series from the mid station, things like that. So we'll have activities. So the gondola has a purpose and a place to go to at the mid station. And then when we go to the top, you can see at the top, you can see this little octagon-shaped building. That will be the restaurant. We'll have a restaurant there. That will be the place for people to travel to. And when you get there, we have all sorts of ideas about the amenities that we want to do up there. Things that we want that are not necessarily the same as everybody else. We know that Waterville's different. We know that Waterville needs to have unique quality that needs to bring people into the valley, and we need them to stay. We need them to be here. We need them to appreciate our environment, appreciate what we all came here for, what we all love about Waterville. And so we're not looking at zip lines, we're not looking at mountain coasters, but we are looking at things like aerial venture walking courses. So if you haven't seen this, it's called the treetop walk, right? Very popular in Europe, Dublin. I went to one in Lux. Treetop walk, the one in Lux that I went to was, I believe, 1.4 kilometers long. And you go at the treetop and you walk, and you just can enjoy the scenery from that area. It's a beautiful way to enjoy the mountain atmosphere. And they integrate little adventure pieces in there for the kids. So they have like a little ropes thing, or they have a spider web, or they have blocks that you walk over, or they have an educational piece over here. They have what we're doing with our Wonder Points. They have that type of point where you can click on it and actually tells you a story about what you're looking at. More playgrounds, things of that sort at the top of Green Peak. We have a lot of space up there. You've all been to the top of Green Peak. We have a lot of space we can spread out and add those activities for the kids, add the activities for the adults. Have a deck up there that we can look over all of the valley at one time. You've got views 360 degrees. That's why we're looking at it like an octagon type look. But that's the development stuff that we're into now, thinking about what that looks like and how does that activity complement the gondola? What does that do for our environment, for bringing people in here and making this truly a destination for people to come in and spend a full day? You add this to what we already have, you got a really nice environment. So here's a 3D rendering. This is the first time I've showed this. This is a 3D rendering. We've been doing quite a bit of these 3D renderings lately, but you can see the gondola coming out of town, hitting the mid station, and then going up the trails. Now this is the full trail system. This trail here is the one that you saw on the project proposal, and then this trail, and this trail, and this trail. Well, sorry, it's this trail and this trail are the ones that you saw on the project proposal. We're trying to just give imagery so that when we have these discussions, we can talk about it with some sort of a frame of mind. Trust me, after you work on these for a while and you drive by town square, that's pretty much all you can see now, at least for me. So that's a view of the mid station. You can see how, you know, the current 49 road, it's not quite the access road because it's right before the split of the access road. You can see how that drives up and gives you a nice little parking lot. This is where we'd have the learner center eventually. This is a very early rendition of the building. We're kind of playing with ideas of what that could possibly look like right now. And this is where the gondola goes up. The skiable vertical from here is just over 1,200 feet. So if you remember, I said it was 13 something. So it's very flat across the bottom from there to town. And unfortunately, you can't ski from there. You can, anyone who's Nordic skiing, you know that you can go down Swayze Town and hit that one little hill, and then you go up, and then you ski down into the bridge. This is kind of the town before, and then you can see where the gondola cuts in between Osceola 1, and we've been in communications with their board of directors, and they are on board with this, and they have talked quite a bit about it. Throughout this entire development, we've kept them really in close contact, and we appreciate their partnership with this. They're the ones that are being the most impact, but at the same time probably have some of the most benefit with this because they're within walking distance of that bottom terminal. You can see back in the background there, you can see like the parking structure there, the gondola terminal here, you know, some of this early development planning that we've been doing. This is another look from the road looking up towards the mountain in between the two buildings, and you can see how we're planning to make sure that gondola is up above those buildings, to make sure it's high enough so it doesn't impact the residents of that building. And then back towards town, you know, what we envision that to look like. And you can see how once you start adding the foliage into it, once you start getting some more definition into these 3D renderings, you can see envision a little bit more of how it stays in the theme of Waterloo. It's not going to look like downtown Boston. So where are we at? The project proposal letter has been accepted. The third-party contractor, all the lawyers, and our watchdogs have all been put into place. So that's been quite a process over the past year, figuring all this stuff out. Who knew that there's a whole community of lawyers that do only NEPA? That's a whole different world for us. So we've been researching that a lot. The third-party contractor is SE Group. We had a long period of time where we were accepting applications from all kinds of third-party contractors. We chose the SE Group due to their experience with mountains and working with the National Forest, especially the White Mountain National Forest. Then some watchdogs are put into place to make sure that the SE and the Forest Service and ourselves, we're doing the right things. We're doing it timely and efficiently to make sure that we don't waste time and money. The U.S. Forest Service team has been put into place. They're working with the SE Group. They're developing proposed actions. They're putting the project design criteria together and mitigation and monitoring measures to minimize the environmental impacts, and working on the final letter of intent. And the letter of intent is really where we're at. So that letter of intent goes out to Washington. And what that basically is saying, that the proposed action is going to be that we are going to do an EIS to environmentally assess what we have going on here. And it goes to Washington to make sure that Washington agrees that our forest is following the rest of the national forest and the rest of the federal departments as to what level of environmental assessment this type of a project needs. So once they have this letter all together and they get all this process together, it goes out to Washington. And then we have to wait. So then we get the notice of the proposed action. We include the project purpose and need, description, and preliminary findings, and we mail to the public and to the agencies. So all of this goes out. So once the Washington says, yep, this is an EIS, we put it all together and we send it out. And we send it out for comment period and make sure that we get as much comment period as possible. This is also where we do scoping period with the legal notices, and we publish it in the newspaper. The public has the opportunity to present comments about the project on the website and or in writing, by fax, by email, or in person. This is where we have the public open houses. So we're a little bit jumping the gun here by doing this right now, but as we know from earlier slides, the resort only works with the community, the landowner, and the resort all coming together. And when we talk about this around the community, and I live here, I'm part of the community. I hear people talking about the gondola. I want to make sure that we're talking about it in the correct manner. This isn't something happening tomorrow. We're not going to the top of the Tecumseh. We aren't going to the Snows Mountain. We aren't going to the base area. This is our plan right now. So that's where we're at, and that's where we want to put this forward to make sure that everyone is on the same page. And this is going to happen more. We're going to be, when it gets mailed out, it's going to get mailed out to every agency, what do they call those guys?
Special interest groups.
Special interest groups, there's a name for them. But every special interest groups will end up getting it. We'll probably have public discussions like this, not just here, but elsewhere in New England. This will turn into a lot of public discussion. So as that three pillars need to come together, we really need to make sure that as a community, we're strong, and we know that this is something that we want in our community. If you object against it, you have every right to. Every right, that's what we're here for. This is how our democracy works. But this is very important that we all are informed on it. So back to the NEPA process. So 1, 2, 3, we're right there. Proposed action development. And that's been 4 years since the master development plan.
Yes.
So 3 for the top 2, 1 for the third. We're going on to all of this. And that's going to be a bit of time. And the reason I wanted to run through this again primarily was the fact that this doesn't happen overnight. This isn't something that we're going to have constructed next week. You can see how much work we've put into this over the years that I've been here, over the 10 years that I've been here, and many, many years before me. This has been in the 2022 town plan. It was voted upon by the public that we approve and we encourage the development of that transportation link. So up until this point, we have all been very positive about this experience, and that's what we need to do. And that's why I'm here today, is to make sure that I'm filling the community in on where we're at and making sure that everybody understands that this is something important and this is something that I think we can do and we can move forward. So I'm going to slide back just because I figured, whoops, that's not where I wanted to go. I figured at this time we'd probably have some questions, and I'd want to have that slide up. Perfect. So, questions, comments, concerns?
First off, thank you for sharing the
Absolutely.
information. Yeah.
Happy to.
It's nice to hear this part of it, because in that presentation last fall, it was so broad, there was so much, so this piece is good to hear.
And I nailed an hour, by the way.
Yeah, nice work. Comments can probably take that long too, so,
I don't know, I haven't seen hands yet.
everyone here, do take a chance to have a conversation, but again, this is in the space that we are just gathering info, and it's fantastic that, you guys came to share it in this way, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having the speaker series. It's a great, opportunity for us to be able to do these types of things. Go ahead.
Tim, is the slide right there session